Using your EV to power your home sounds like a no-brainer. You already own the battery and the energy's sitting right there. And when the grid goes down, your car keeps the lights on while your neighbor's house goes dark. It's hard to argue with that. But there's something built into that setup that almost nobody talks about. And once you see it, it changes how you think about the whole thing. Here's what's actually happening when you use your EV as a home battery and what changes that don't show up on the screen. Most people think about this the same way. You charge the car and energy sits in the battery. You use some of it to run the house and then you charge it back up. Nothing's lost. That mental model makes sense because it mirrors how we think about electricity in general. A resource you store and pull from when you need it. The problem is that the battery doesn't see it that way. To the battery, there's no difference between energy that moves to drive the car and energy that moves to run your refrigerator. It doesn't care what the energy was for. It only responds to how much energy actually flows through it over its lifetime. That distribution matters more than people might realize. EV batteries age based on three things: time, temperature, and total energy throughput, meaning the cumulative amount of energy that's ever flowed in or out of that battery. In occasional use, a storm, a rare outage, the extra wear from powering your home is really small. We're talking about rounding error territory, so that's not the real issue. The real issue is what happens to your behavior once the car becomes something you might need. The moment your EV doubles as a home backup, it stops being just a car. Now it's part of the infrastructure, and you start treating it like it's infrastructure. You stop letting the battery drop to 20% before you plug it in, and you start keeping it at 60, 70, 80, or even 90% just in case. You charge more often than your driving actually requires, and you start thinking less about range and more about reserve. None of that feels like a big deal in the moment, but zoom out, and here's what's actually happened. You've reduced the usable portion of a battery you paid a lot of money for, and you're running more cycles than your driving actually requires. Not because the car needs it, but because you do. The car didn't change, your relationship to the car changed. If the vehicle is part of your home energy plan, battery size stops being about how far you can drive, and it becomes about how long you can run the house. You start looking at that 100 kilowatt hour battery pack not because you need 350 miles of range, but because you want 3 days of backup power. Now you're choosing a car based on a use case that has nothing to do with your driving, and you're paying accordingly. There's also a physics reality most people gloss over. Your car's battery stores DC power and your house runs on AC. That conversion has to happen somewhere, either inside the vehicle or in an external hardware piece, and it's not lossless. You're burning efficiency every time we make the conversion. And the rate the car can actually deliver power to your home is nowhere near what it can pull during hard acceleration. Driving can demand enormous current in short bursts. Home backup is throttled by inverter limits and system design, so you're operating the battery in a completely different envelope than it was built around. So even though the battery is capable of delivering very high power while driving, using it to run a home is slower, and it's a more constrained process that depends on the system around it. And that difference reinforces that this thing isn't the same thing as just driving the car. Part of why people underestimate this is that nothing feels consumed. With a gas generator, the cost is obvious. Fuel goes in, fuel gets burned, and the tank gets empty. You feel every gallon. With an EV, the energy just comes back. You plug it in, the number goes up, everything looks normal, and so there's no smoke, no smell, no empty tank. So it doesn't register as consumption. But what's actually changing is the total workload on the battery, and more importantly, the habits you build around it. So when does this make sense? Well, I think it makes a lot of sense, honestly, in the right situations. Power's out, you need to keep the heat on or the fridge running, and your car is 80% charged sitting in the driveway. Use it. That's exactly what the capability is there for. The battery impact is minimal and the practical value is real. The trade-off shows up when this becomes a strategy rather than an emergency measure. That's to say, when you start managing the car's charge around the house instead of around your driving, or when the way you use the car starts being driven by the house instead of by how you drive. Your EV is not a free home battery. It's a battery you're choosing how to allocate. You can use it for driving, or you can use it for driving plus backup. Both are legitimate choices, but the second option changes how you charge, how you drive, and even what car you buy. Those changes are real. They just don't show up as something you immediately notice. Once you see that, the question isn't whether your car can power your house, it's whether you've actually thought through what you're signing up for when it does. This is Wrench and Reason, where we explain how modern cars actually work. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.